Hello, welcome to the Tea Party Hardy channel. Well, what's it like to have your kids going to school in California? When they're going to school in California, because don't forget, it's a pandemic, and children have been on lockdown, and now curfew. We must not let this moment go unnoticed. California Education Chief calls for a new plan on, you guessed it, racism and bias. Let's keep the racial divide going, shall we? United we stand, divided we fall. Let us keep falling, let us keep dividing. California's education chief said Monday he plans to lead an effort focusing on racism in public schools, because we don't have enough indoctrination already. During an emotional remarks about, you guessed it, George Floyd, whose killing has left him struggling to answer his own children who asked, why did this happen? What's so difficult to answer? Because a cop acted apparently inappropriately. There's going to be a trial. We're going to get more information. We're going to find out. And if he acted inappropriately, he's going to go to jail for hopefully a very long time. And if we learn new information that somehow acquits him, then he will walk away. That's how this happens. It's really not complicated. And if you were teaching your children how the American system works, we'd all be a lot better off instead of this indoctrination factory you want to enhance, because it's not like it isn't already true. Now is the time to address racism. Really? So we haven't been addressing it for the last, couple of 100 years? Where have you been, good sir? And implicit bias in education. You want to learn about implicit bias? You should read, excuse me, you should read Heather McDonald. She has enormous amounts of information on the falsity of implicit bias. Tony Thurmond said, blinking back tears during a live stream Monday. You've got the county library boss of LA sending out emails full of a racial diatribe. Now you've got the California education chief sending out these streaming messages of racial diatribes. Guys, you forgot what your job is. Your job isn't to indoctrinate the children, and I'm talking to both you and the librarian. Your job is to make sure that they can read properly, make their own assessments properly, and hopefully do some math. And it would be lovely if they knew history and some civics, since you can't seem to figure out the answer to when your daughter asks you, why did this happen? That's a civics question. It requires a civics answer. But no, the first thing you turn to is indoctrination. More racial division. You want this country to come together. You want it to be the United States. Back off the division. It's not complicated. Thurmond is the only statewide elected official who is African American in a blue state. So whose fault is that? Maybe there weren't any running. Did you ever think of that? This assumption that every job should be filled by every color. There's not enough colors. That's why they're called minorities. Do the math. Thurmond said he has reached out to state superintendents around the country and will initiate conversations with California educational leaders, parents, and students, but also go beyond the education sphere and work with elected officials, police chiefs, and government agencies to do what that we haven't already done. You're in a blue state. You're in one of the bluest states. Your side fails. Your side doesn't work. We have to deal with racism and bias in every sector of our community. In a blue state, said Thurmond. We have to go beyond education, because racism is taught by you and your minions. It's absolutely being taught. Did you read the letter that the librarian sent out? I made another video for that if you want to check it out. Did you look at her letter? It's unbelievably dripping with racism and division. The conversations will focus on how schools can provide more training for staff and students on implicit bias. Implicit bias is, Hey, Whitey, you're a racist with your white privilege. Hey, Whitey. Hey. No, that's pretty much the only ones they attack. They will also examine legislation and inequalities in California schools, the bluest of blue states. Clearly, you're admitting your methods fail, where black and brown students are more likely to be suspended, pushed out of school and into the criminal justice system, he said. But wait, we passed Prop 47. We passed Prop 57. That can't be happening anymore. And possibly it could be because more black and brown students are doing more naughty things. Have you ever considered that? Instead of having a floating bar for different colors, which is what he's saying, how about we just simply hold people accountable for what they do? Or as some other person said, let us not judge a person by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Mr. Thurmond, how about you consider that? Thurmond said he has been haunted by Floyd's killings while in police custody last week in Minnesota, and struggled with it as an elected official, as a black man, more racially divisive language, who every day thinks about the impact of race. Wow. That's called obsessive compulsive. Did you know that, sir? When you think about it every single day, that's called obsessive compulsive. It has been difficult for me to make sense of for how a man could beg and plead for his life and still have his life snuffed out. You're not alone in that. You're just the only one racializing it. It's been difficult for me as a parent raising African American children to know what to say, how to answer their questions when they ask, Dad, why did this happen? We covered that. And could this happen to them? It can happen to anybody if you've got bad cops. But you're not going to find it in the media if it's a white person. And do you know how we know this? Because you don't know any of them. I do. Because I read them, but you have to go deep, 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 deep. Douglas Zerby, Z-E-R-B-Y. And that I may not be able to keep them safe. Well, you're not helping by instituting all of this racial division either. Thurmond said he appreciated protesters raising their voices. Really? Where was he in celebrating the protesters right before these protesters that were saying we don't want to be on lockdown? Where was your appreciation of them? Oh, and the media just constantly keeps heaping praise on these rioters and protesters. And it's like, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, where were you? There was no celebrating. And I heard at least 4 times yesterday, oh, they're doing their First Amendment rights. Like, you were completely okay with the governors banning them 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Thurmond said he appreciated protesters raising their voices, but urged them to demonstrate peacefully. Well, why should they? You keep shoving all this political stuff down there and saying Whitey's bad with your implicit bias training. You're begging for the fire, and now you're complaining that it's getting hot. We'll see you in the future.